First Contact's Edge. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the Horizon, her weathered fingers tracing the ancient katana hilt at her hip, a family heirloom that had seen 6 generations of service. The exploration vessel's bridge hummed with tension as they approached the massive crystalline structures that marked the edge of meridian space. Their first contact protocol had been met with what could only be described as cosmic laughter. Primitive propulsion systems detected. The alien transmission had crackled through their comms. Quaint chemical weapons identified. How entertaining that such a species would venture so far from their cradle. Sarah's jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady as she addressed her crew. Maintain course. Let them underestimate us. It's worked in our favor before. The bridge crew shared knowing glances. They'd all heard the stories of humanity's rise among the stars. The Horizon's sensors lit up as 3 Meridian vessels materialized around them, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight in impossible patterns. Each ship dwarfed the Horizon, their energy signatures off the charts. Sarah had expected this. The Meridians were notorious for their technological superiority and their disdain for younger species. Human vessel, a new voice cut through their comms, smooth as liquid crystal. You have entered the sovereign space of the Meridian Ascendancy. Your presence is noted with amusement. State your purpose before we decide whether to obliterate you or simply send you home with a warning. Sarah stepped forward, her hand still resting on the katana. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. We come seeking dialogue and exchange of knowledge. She paused, then added, though I notice your scanning beams haven't penetrated our hull. Interesting. A moment of silence followed. Sarah could almost feel the Meridians' confusion. Their scans, capable of stripping most ships bare of secrets, had indeed failed to penetrate the Horizon's seemingly primitive hull. What they couldn't know was that the vessel's skin was laced with quantum-phased metamaterials, bending their sophisticated scans around the ship like water around a stone. Your vessel's properties are unexpected. The Meridian voice returned, a note of uncertainty creeping in. You will be escorted to Crystallus Prime for examination. Resist, and, with respect, Sarah interrupted. We detected your weapons powering up the moment we entered your space. If you intended to destroy us, you would have tried already. Shall we dispense with the threats and move to actual diplomacy? The bridge fell silent. Sarah's crew held their breath. This was the gamble, calling the Meridians bluff, while revealing they could detect their weapon systems, another technological capability they shouldn't possess. A new voice cut through the silence, deeper and resonating with authority. Commander Chen, I am High Arbiter Vextal. Your directness is noted. Perhaps there is more to your species than our initial scan suggested. You will be escorted to our capital, not as a prisoner, but as a diplomatic envoy. However, the voice hardened. Any hostile action will be met with immediate response. Understood, High Arbiter, Sarah replied, allowing herself a small smile. Though I should warn you, your defensive grid has a 3-second lag between detection and response. We noticed it 6 minutes ago. You might want to look into that. Another long pause. When Vextal spoke again, there was something new in his voice. Respect tinged with wariness. You continue to surprise, Commander. Follow our lead vessels. And Commander Chen, the weapon at your hip. Our scans indicate it is primitive steel, yet it bears energy signatures we cannot identify. Would you care to explain? Sarah's smile widened as she gazed at the ancient katana. Family tradition, High Arbiter. Some things improve with age, like humanity's capacity to surprise. As the Horizon fell into formation with the Meridian escorts, Sarah's second-in-command leaned close. Playing with fire, Commander. Sometimes you have to show a little steel to earn respect. Sarah replied. Besides, they haven't even noticed our actual surprises yet. Deep within the Horizon's hull, quantum computers hummed, processing data at speeds that would make even the Meridians pause. The ship's true capabilities remained hidden, Layers of seemingly primitive technology concealing innovations that had leapfrogged conventional development paths. Humanity had learned long ago that the straightest path wasn't always the best one. As they approached Crystallis Prime, its crystalline spires stretching impossibly into space, Sarah received a private transmission from Vextal. "Commander, I must ask, how did you mask your quantum signature? Our systems should have detected." "High Arbiter," Sarah interrupted gently, "perhaps we should save some surprises for the diplomatic exchange. Though I would be interested in discussing why your people have been massing ships along the outer rim. The energy signatures suggest you're preparing for war, but not with us." The silence that followed told Sarah everything she needed to know. Humanity's entrance into Meridian space hadn't been by chance. Something was coming, something that had the most advanced civilization in known space preparing for battle. The katana at her hip hummed softly, its quantum-entangled blade responding to her heightened alertness. The Meridians weren't the only ones with secrets, and humanity's unique approach to combining ancient wisdom with cutting-edge technology might be exactly what was needed in the days to come. The ancient threat. The crystalline chamber of the Meridian High Council stretched toward an impossible ceiling, its faceted walls reflecting and refracting light in ways that made Sarah's eyes water. She stood before the assembled council, their translucent forms arranged in a semicircle of judgment and barely concealed disdain. Only Vextal, seated at the center, showed something approaching respect. "You claim knowledge of the Void Seekers," one council member's voice chimed like breaking glass, "yet your species barely understands quantum mechanics. You still use physical weapons." A gesture toward Sarah's katana. "How could you possibly comprehend the threat we face?" Sarah stepped forward, her boots clicking against the crystal floor. "Because while you were perfecting your energy weapons and quantum drives, we were learning to think differently. The Void Seekers don't operate by conventional physics. That's why your defenses fail against them." She drew her katana in one fluid motion, causing the council members to shift back in alarm. But instead of attacking, she held the blade flat, revealing complex patterns etched into the steel. This blade was forged using techniques from Earth's feudal period, but the patterns contain quantum-locked information. Every strike maps probabilistic outcomes through time itself. Ancient wisdom meeting future technology. She sheathed the weapon. Sometimes the old ways and the new need to work together. Vextal leaned forward, his crystalline form catching the light. "Explain how this helps against the Void Seekers." Sarah activated a holographic projector, filling the chamber with images of vast, shadow-like entities tearing through space. "The Void Seekers exist partially outside normal spacetime. Your quantum weapons pass right through them because they're not fully here. But physical objects, especially those quantum-encoded with specific frequencies," she let the implication hang. "Impossible," another council member chimed. "Our scientists have studied the Void Seekers for centuries. Their phase variance makes them immune to conventional matter." "Conventional matter? Yes," Sarah agreed. "But what about matter encoded with quantum signatures that match their phase variance? We've been developing this technology since our first encounter with them 30 years ago." The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Vextal raised a crystalline hand for silence. "You encountered the Void Seekers 30 years ago. Why are you still alive?" Sarah's expression darkened. "Because we didn't try to fight them with pure technology. We adapted, combined old and new. The katana isn't just a sword. It's a key to understanding how they move through space-time. Each battle taught us more about their patterns." She stepped closer to the council, her voice dropping. "But we also learned they're getting stronger. The attack that's coming. It's bigger than anything either of our civilizations has faced alone. That's why we're here." The chamber fell silent as Sarah activated another hologram, this one showing the Void Seekers' attack patterns. "They don't just destroy worlds, they erase them from existence. Your quantum technology is advanced, but it's predictable. They've learned to counter it. What they don't expect is quantum-enhanced physical weapons wielded by beings who can think outside their patterns. You propose an alliance. Vextal's voice carried a mix of disbelief and growing understanding. I propose survival. Sarah corrected. Your technology, our adaptability. Your quantum science, our unconventional tactics. Apart, we're vulnerable. Together, she let her hand rest on the katana's hilt. Together, we might have a chance. A council member floated forward, their crystalline form pulsing with skepticism. And we should trust primitives who hide their true capabilities, who approach us with deception. Sarah smiled. We approached you exactly as we are, a species that learned to hide strength behind apparent weakness. Would you have listened if we'd arrived displaying all our capabilities, or would you have seen us as a threat? Vextal made a sound like chiming crystals, their equivalent of laughter. She has a point, Council. Their deception itself proves their wisdom. He turned to Sarah. But trust must be earned. If you wish an alliance, you must prove your worth in the traditional way. Sarah's hand tightened on her katana. She'd expected this. The trial of crystalline truth. The council's surprise was palpable. Vextal's form brightened. You know of our traditions. We did our homework, Sarah replied. I accept the trial. Then prepare yourself, Commander Chen, Vextal announced. Tomorrow, you face our champion in combat that will test not just your skill, but your very understanding of reality itself. As Sarah left the chamber, she allowed herself a grim smile. The council thought they were testing her worth. In reality, she was teaching them their first lesson about humanity. Never underestimate those who seem primitive. Tomorrow would teach them more. The katana hummed at her side, its quantum-encoded blade singing with possibilities. The Void Seekers were coming, but they expected to face advanced technology wielded by predictable beings. Instead, they would face something far more dangerous, humans wielding a combination of ancient wisdom and future science, backed by the most advanced civilization in known space. The real question wasn't whether humanity would prove worthy of an alliance. The question was whether the Meridians were ready for what that alliance would mean. Trial by combat. The combat arena of Crystallis Prime stretched before Sarah like a frozen ocean. Crystalline formations rose and fell in impossible patterns, their surfaces refracting light in ways that made depth perception nearly impossible. Perfect for the Meridians. Challenging for a human. Unless that human had prepared for exactly this. The crowd of crystalline beings hummed with anticipation. In the highest observation pod, the council watched with detached interest. Only Vextal seemed genuinely curious about the outcome. Sarah's opponent materialized in the arena. Crystal, the Meridian champion. Over 12 feet tall, their crystalline form shifted constantly, making it impossible to predict where one limb ended and another began. They wielded no visible weapons. They didn't need to. Their entire being was a weapon, capable of channeling quantum energies that could shred most opponents at the molecular level. The trial of crystalline truth. Vextal's voice resonated through the arena, will determine humanity's worth as allies against the Void Seekers. Commander Chen, you may use any weapons or technology you brought with you. Crystal will fight as is traditional. The trial ends with submission or incapacitation. Sarah drew her katana, its blade catching the light in ways that made several Meridians shift uncomfortably. They could sense something about the weapon, even if they couldn't understand it. Begin, Vextal commanded. Crystal moved like liquid light, their form dissolving and reforming as they rushed toward Sarah. Energy crackled around them, distorting space itself. A traditional warrior would have tried to dodge. Sarah stepped directly toward the attack. Her blade met Crystal's energy field, and for a moment, reality seemed to hold its breath. The quantum-encoded patterns in the steel interacted with the Meridian's energy, creating a cascade of possibilities. Where their powers met, space itself shimmered with potential. Impossible. Crystal's voice chimed in disbelief as their energy failed to disintegrate the primitive weapon. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Impossibility is humanity's specialty. She moved through forms that looked like traditional sword techniques, but followed patterns calculated by quantum computers. Each strike mapped probability space. Each step took her through positions that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. The katana's blade left trails of light that formed complex mathematical patterns in the air. The crowd's hum rose in pitch as they realized what they were seeing. This wasn't just combat. It was a demonstration of principles their scientists had theorized but never implemented. Physical combat merged with quantum mathematics. Crystal adapted quickly, their crystalline form shifting to counter Sarah's patterns. But that's what she had counted on. The more they adapted, the more they fell into the trap of predictability. Every counter followed logical patterns, each defense mathematically perfect. Sarah broke pattern. She threw herself into a role that by all quantum calculations was suicide, leaving herself completely exposed. Crystal moved to strike, exactly as predicted. At the last moment, Sarah's blade swept up, not to strike Crystal, but to complete a pattern she'd been weaving throughout the entire fight. The quantum-encoded steel sang as it closed the final vector, and suddenly every probability wave in the arena collapsed into a single point. Crystal froze, caught in a quantum lock of their own energy patterns. Sarah held her blade steady, maintaining the lock. An ally who thinks differently, she called out to the council, might see solutions where others see only problems. The counter-strike. The Void Seekers arrived 3 days earlier than predicted. Their shadow ships emerged from non-space like tears in reality, each one larger than a Meridian battle cruiser. The combined fleet of human and Meridian ships hung in high orbit around Crystallis Prime, waiting. Sarah stood on the Horizon's bridge, now integrated into the heart of the Meridian Fleet Command. After her victory in the trial, the Meridians had begun to understand that humanity's apparent primitiveness masked deeper innovations. Enemy ships are not following predicted patterns. A Meridian tactical officer reported, their crystalline form pulsing with concern. Their phase variance is impossible. No, Sarah corrected, studying the tactical display. Not impossible. They've evolved, just like we knew they would. She turned to Vextal, who commanded the Meridian flagship. This is why we don't rely solely on technology. They can adapt to predictable patterns, but they can't adapt to chaos. Vextal's form shifted thoughtfully. You propose we abandon our tactical doctrine. Generations of refined combat theory. I propose we combine it with something they won't expect. Sarah activated a tactical display showing her plan. The Meridian officers stared in shock at what appeared to be mathematical nonsense. This is, one began. Madness. Sarah finished. Exactly. Your ships provide the power. Ours provide the unpredictability. We attack in patterns that look random but contain hidden order, like a sword stroke that appears to leave you open but actually completes a killing pattern. The Void Seekers' advance continued, their ships phasing in and out of normal spacetime. Conventional weapons passed through them harmlessly. Even the Meridian's quantum cannons barely registered. All ships, Sarah commanded, execute pattern Chaos 1. The human ships moved first, their seemingly primitive drives pushing them into positions that made no tactical sense. The Meridian ships followed reluctantly, their crystalline hulls blazing with contained power. As the Void Seekers engaged, something remarkable happened. The apparently random positions of the Allied fleet created quantum interference patterns. Each ship's position had been calculated not for traditional tactical advantage, but to create a complex web of probability and possibility. The Void Seekers couldn't phase through it because they couldn't predict where the gaps would be. Every time they tried to shift out of normal space, they encountered vessels in positions that shouldn't have been tactically sound, but somehow were exactly where they needed to be. Now, Sarah ordered, activate the quantum locks. Every human ship activated hidden arrays of quantum-encoded steel, creating patterns similar to those Sarah had used in the arena. The Meridian ships added their power to the pattern, and suddenly space itself seemed to crystallize around the Void Seekers. Fire! Sarah and Vextal commanded simultaneously. The combined fleet struck with weapons that merged Meridian energy technology with human quantum material science. The Void Seekers, locked in normal space by the quantum pattern, took devastating damage. But it wasn't enough. Unity's dawn. The battle had raged for hours. The combined fleet had bloodied the Void Seekers, but more kept coming. Each wave learned from the previous one, adapting to even the chaotic patterns Sarah had developed. Our quantum containment is failing, Vextal reported, his crystalline form showing signs of stress. They're learning to phase through even your quantum locks. Sarah stood at the horizon's tactical display, her hand resting on her katana's hilt. The blade hummed with accumulated quantum data from the battle. Each engagement had taught them more about how the Void Seekers moved, fought, existed. They adapt to patterns, she said slowly. Any pattern, no matter how chaotic, because they're looking for patterns. So let's give them none. Impossible, a Meridian officer chimed. Even chaos follows patterns. Unless, Sarah smiled, drawing her katana, we stop trying to impose order altogether. Your ships have been copying our quantum lock technology, yes. Vextal's form brightened slightly, embarrassment. We may have analyzed your methods. Good, because we've been studying your quantum drives. Separate, each technology is powerful but predictable. Together, she held up her blade. Together, they can do this. She struck the air with her katana, the quantum-encoded steel leaving a tear in space-time. But unlike the Void Seeker's tears, this one shimmered with possibility. All ships, she commanded, dump your quantum drives into the tear. Full power. That would overload every system, Vextal protested. The energy release would create something new, Sarah finished. Something that exists in all possibilities simultaneously. No pattern because it's every pattern. Understanding dawned in Vextal's crystalline form, a quantum state that encompasses all states, making it impossible to adapt to. Sarah nodded, because it's already adapted to everything. The order went out. Meridian ships began channeling their quantum drive's power into the tear Sarah had created. Human vessels added their own quantum-locked fields. The tear grew, becoming a sphere of pure possibility. The Void Seekers, sensing the threat, turned their full attention to it. They tried to phase away, but the sphere affected all of space-time around it. There was nowhere to phase to because it existed in all phases at once. Now, Sarah whispered, raising her katana one final time. She brought the blade down, its quantum-encoded patterns interacting with the sphere of possibility. Reality shuddered. The sphere collapsed, taking the Void Seekers with it into a state of quantum uncertainty from which there could be no return. When it was over, when the sensors showed no trace of the Void Seekers, Sarah finally lowered her blade. The quantum patterns etched into the steel had changed, evolved. Just like humanity, just like the alliance they had forged. Vextal approached her on the bridge, his crystalline form glowing with newfound respect. We thought we had reached the pinnacle of development, he said. We thought primitiveness was something to be overcome. But you taught us that true advancement comes not from discarding the old, but from finding new ways to use it. Sarah sheathed her katana, smiling. And you taught us that sometimes the future needs to remember its past. Apart, we were vulnerable. Together, Vextal finished. We are something entirely new. As the combined fleet regrouped around Crystallis Prime, Sarah looked out at the stars. Humanity had proved itself not by becoming like the Meridians, but by showing them a different way. The blade at her hip hummed softly, its quantum patterns still shifting, still evolving, just like they all would together.